to see that it's used in the best fashion that you think should be done.
That's good. Next thing is not becoming a ward of a state, and that's more like long-term care. Once again, you haven't done proper estate planning. You've gone into a nursing home which costs about $70,000 a year. Say you have a $300,000 estate. In 3 years or 4 years, that money could be all gone.
That's for sure.
And then you become a ward of the state. How does estate planning help that?
Right. Well, we would look at this well before you actually have a need for nursing home care. We would probably be looking at this, I would say at least at the point where an individual is 50 years old. You would start looking at that because there are things that you can do. Like you say, $70,000 a year to take care of yourself in a nursing home. That's a big cost and can eat up an estate rather quickly. One of the concerns I think that you really have to look at, especially if you're married, is the fact that if one spouse has to go into the nursing home first, that you can consume all the assets rather quickly, and the individual that's at home is not going to have that much to help them through the balance of their lifetime. So that is a very serious concern. When you look at the fact that people are living now into their 80s and they have a need for that money, if one of the spouses goes into the nursing home in their 70s or early 70s, there's a need for those assets for the surviving or the stay-at-home person, and I think that's where you really have to be concerned. So if you're looking at it from an estate planning standpoint, at 50 years old, you're thinking, well, what can I do? Because normally at 50, you're looking at your mom and your dad who may be in their 70s or 80s, and they're needing that care. And you're starting to think, maybe with some adequate planning, and I can maybe avoid some of the problems that mom and dad are having right now. And you can do that now with long-term care insurance.
Okay. That's an important thing. The next thing I'm going to basically answer the question is, have the ability to stay where you want. If you've got the cash, you can walk in, pay. If you got the insurance, if you don't have the cash or the insurance, the state tells you where to be. And I believe it's up to 150 miles away from your point of residence. And when Greg and I were doing this before and we were going over, you could live in Lockport and be put in a nursing home out in Syracuse, and your family members might only be able to see you a couple times a year because of the travel distance, work commitments, and all that. And I don't think you want to end up in a nursing home where nobody comes and sees you and your family's 2.5, 3 hours away and they're only going to come see you in the good weather. And you might be stuck there for the holidays too.
That's a big misconception people have with regard to Medicaid, and you're absolutely right. Medicaid was never meant to be considered the be-all, end-all for financing nursing home care. It really is a statute that requires you to impoverish yourself before you are able to get the state to cover your nursing home costs. And most people throughout life don't rely on some subsidy or finances from the government to finance their necessities. And obviously, nursing home care is a necessity. More than half of the individuals that are on earth are going to need that nursing care at some point in their lives. So you really have to think of it as an ultimate necessity, I think. The odds are there. And we don't want to rely on the government to take care of us because, as you say, the government's going to have a standard of care that might be different than what we might want at the time in life that we need nursing home care. And by that I mean you want to have the say as to where you go. What level of care do you want? It wouldn't be a bad idea as you get into your sunset years to know. Go look at some of the assisted living facilities and nursing homes and let your executor, perhaps your children, know which places you like. And generally speaking, those places are going to give preference to the individual that has the necessary assets to cover those costs. And when you have competing interests for one of the rooms or beds in the facility, obviously somebody that has Medicaid versus someone that has the ability to pay, and by that I mean either their private funds or the long-term care insurance, is going to be given preference for that. So this is going to assure that you're going to be able to get the level of care you want at the place that you want. So very important.
Well, once again, it all ties into the importance of estate planning, to make sure you do not have problems with your kids, with your long-term care, if you stay in, lowering your taxes. Now we're going to touch on a couple things real quick. I'll say I don't have a will. What's worst case scenario? I die without a will, and I've got a family and kids. Worst case scenario.
Well, the worst case scenario is that most people don't realize this, otherwise they would be flocking into their attorney's offices to get those wills done. The state of New York will pick up and make your own estate plan. They will decide who is, first of all, going to be the executor of your estate, and that's based on the law. They will also decide who is going to get your children, as I said, and also decide on who is going to get the assets that you have. Let's just use the scenario where the husband dies first and leaves wife and children. In most situations where you have minor children, the spouse believes that they are the rightful beneficiary to the husband's entire estate, and common sense and logic might make you think that that is appropriate and proper. And I personally feel that it probably is in many situations, but the state does not look at it like that. A portion is going to go to the spouse, and then a portion is going to go to the minor children. And that minor children's share, because you have not dictated how it will be taken care of, is going to be tied up into a fund that's going to be supervised by the courts until the children are 18. And I don't think there's anything magical about 18. Compounding a bad situation, that child's going to be given those assets at age 18, whereas if you proper planning, you can decide that that child will get their money at a certain age that you think is proper as far as maturity goes, and you can stagger the funding back to the children at different ages with proper planning, but with a properly drafted will. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is that yes, the state will step in and decide it all for you, but I don't think it's going to be what most people think that it is. And that administration, I think, is not going to be done properly for every individual circumstances, for the most part, the majority.
So the best thing, once again, is have a will, say who your assets are going to go to, so you don't end up having a third party come in and basically say, you get this, this, and this. You know, you may want everything to go to your wife to handle everything, and your wife could actually end up, you said, I got enough money, I don't need a will. Everything will go to her, but it could split up all the assets, and your wife may have to go back to work and hire daycare for your kids. So that's something, once again, you need the good estate planning. That is the next part of it. What happens if you go out, you don't have a will, don't do estate planning? What's the worst case scenario on that? Like, say you're going into a nursing home. You could lose every asset you have.
Well, yeah, New York State requires you to spend down. And let's first start with the spouse that is home, and unfortunately one of the spouses gets sick and can no longer be taken care of at home. What happens in that scenario? The stay-at-home spouse will usually go to a nursing home, make the application, and as long as they have sufficient assets, that individual will go into that nursing home. And the cost could be anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000, in excess of $70,000 per year. So the spouse at home will write a check to the nursing home for that much each year, and will continue to spend down. Now, a lot of people would think that they would go to the state and apply for Medicaid for that individual. That wouldn't happen, because they would say to that spouse, we're going to allow you to stay in your home, but we're going to require you to spend all of your assets, whatever they might be, stocks, bonds, liquid assets, all the way down to approximately $80,000. Now, that's a bad situation, because that spouse, if they have 10 more years to live, that $80,000 is not going to be sufficient for all the contingencies of life, especially if they've been relying on that money for income purposes. In other words, using the dividends and the interest off of their investments. If they have to spend down the $80,000 with a return of 4% is a mere pittance. Say, you know, a reasonable amount to take from a portfolio of 4% per year. $80,000 will not generate enough money in many scenarios, even if you have Social Security and a pension. So that's a very bad situation. If you don't do any planning, that's what happens. And then in the situation where you're the last person to survive, and you need to go into the nursing home. Now, all of a sudden, if you say, well, I'll rely on Medicaid, which we don't, I said before, is not the way to fund nursing care, but if you have to rely on Medicaid, they're going to require you to spend down all of your assets down to approximately a couple $1,000s. Now, all of a sudden, you've just lost your legacy. Everything that you worked for, that you tried to guard so carefully, and are not able to leave anything to your loved ones, your children, to make their life easier, or to whoever else you think is important, or charities, or to carry on. You know, a lot of people like to leave things to charity because they want to carry on their life's work. You're not going to be able to do that.
Gotcha. So once again, this is the topic of the show, is the importance of doing the correct estate planning and make sure you got the correct coverages so you don't end up in Disasterville.
Exactly. That's sort of like, you know, there's no way to put it other than it is a disaster.
Yeah.
You don't do proper planning. It just seems to me that it does end up in being a disaster.
I mean, I've seen it, you've seen it, you know, probably people that are watching the show have seen it or have gone through it. So once again, if you take an hour, 2 hours, you know, make a call to your attorney or your insurance agent, get everything all set up. I mean, you can protect your own assets. Even if you don't have anything, make that appointment and get your stuff reviewed, because you can do stuff to prevent stuff from happening, or get on lists, or know who to call. You know, you don't want to sit there and say, going into a nursing home, have no money, and you're like, well, who do I call? If you got the numbers or whatever, you're better off on that.
Right. We can also assist that individual when they need to go into the nursing home. Say the spouse is out there and they have a need to apply, they need help from someone that knows how to do it, and maybe do some last-minute planning, which can be done if the proper instruments that we talked about before are drawn ahead of time. Last-minute planning is not good.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's a disaster. We got about 1.5 minutes left. Want a really durable power of attorney? Why is it so important? Real quick.
I really have to emphasize the fact that when we become incompetent, you know, we have trust in certain individuals that they can do the right job, and we want to have somebody. I don't think we want to put anybody in a power of attorney situation that really we don't trust and have complete faith in. So we want to indicate to someone, and also let them know that they've been designated as power of attorney, to make sure that they're willing to accept it. But I think that, you know, you need that power of attorney throughout life, whether it be in your younger stages or your older stages, particularly if you have a situation where you can't make those decisions. You go into the hospital, you're in a coma, your wife's out there, she can't sign checks, she can't transfer assets. You need that in the most basic situation there. Say you're a business person and you're running a business and you're a sole proprietor, and you get into that situation. Now your business would, in essence, be shut down because there is no one to sign for you. Where this way you can indicate to someone how to take care of those. In your older stages, basically, you know, you need someone to take care of those assets when you're in the nursing home. And I think that a good, durable power of attorney that lasts through any circumstances is good throughout life. So I think everyone should have a power of attorney.
Okay. That's basically what the concept of this show was, to give the worst case scenario, how to avoid it and everything. Greg, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Les.
And we'll put information up at the end of the show so people will be able to call Greg or call me or call one of the local attorneys, so you'll be able to protect yourself against any of these disasters. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.